I'll try to keep to that schedule. Schedule. Okay, I'm trying to split the screen between my PDF copy, galley copy of the book that we should all have the opportunity to have in our hands here in the next couple of weeks. So here we go. Let's see. So how to commence? I will commence with the epigram for the book, and it is from Ludwig Wittgenstein. You'll see that he properly peppers a kernel here and there throughout the book, either through epigrams or this little preface piece, cinder block here. It goes, "You must say something new, and yet it must all be old. In fact, you must confine yourself to saying old things, and all the same time, it must be new. Different interpretations must correspond to different applications. A poet, too, has constantly to ask himself, but is what I am writing really true? And this does not necessarily mean, is this how it happens in reality? Yes, you have got to assemble bits of old material, but into a building." This is one of those quotes that just naturally pulled its way to me. I was definitely deeply attracted to it when I first stumbled upon it. I think it was from a little fragment found in Culture and Value that I think posthumously was published by Wittgenstein's estate. I'm just trying to flip through poems, see it sort of, I don't know, Russian roulette, the process, see what lands. Here we go. This one's called The Bunkers. It is in reference, or it references Chang and Ing. They were the conjoined twins who were rather famous in a very carnivalesque amusement sideshow way more than a century ago, I believe. Nonetheless, they did spend some time in North Carolina. It was their place of residence for more than a few years, towards the end of their life, not the end. I haven't checked up on Wikipedia lately to verify that. But this is called The Bunkers, and it sort of mirrors that perceived experience with my own experience with divorce, separation, but not as visceral as their experience, of course. It's called The Bunkers. The bunkers, those lovely years, like the gin-soaked floors of a rent-stabilized dream, remain as they fell, having crushed whatever it was made in between. I keep a crumpled trace of you sprawled across our bed, which we kept held with glue and coffin nails, etching into a copper plate the conjoined pain of Chang and Ing, who, like us, lived life in a bunker of glass that 3 stories up was constantly on display, as if for the world to watch us break. So that is that. Let's see. That experience of divorce then spit me out from New York City at the turn of 2017 into 2017, a very monumental year, as we all can remember. I think I was in New York, and I remember like the sharp distinction, if it wasn't right after New Year's, but you could see this sharp, I don't know, befuddlement and sort of existential dread that everyone hung around with after Trump was elected. A lot of disbelief and shock, notwithstanding all the all the anger, of course. But anyways, that sent me to Asheville, North Carolina into 2017, and I did a little stint at a halfway house. This is that experience recorded. It's called Recovery. Platform of eternity, plentiful graveyard of the abiding pill-fed thought, broken carousel of principles, marriage, our impending divorce, just looming there. The little black keys in the thunderhead, which announce this future, the belittled tense of it all, approaching, never out of touch. A drop of water and a glass of Tylenol, set on a brown box of what's lost. Okay, reboot, start again, follow the weatherman's fingernail down the chalkboard as he sells the same forecast. Value of ruin, the stain of history. Love, how are my books holding up? Okay, I'm gonna float around. I don't want to get too like, I don't know, Lowellian or confessional. I'll read this one called Hide, and it is what it is. So it's one where I'm playing around with language, using it as Malika referenced earlier to Play-Doh, sculpting it like some clay and seeing what might come out of it by the end. This is one of those. Hide. The elongated skull of a Dr. Jekyll had fallen into the improbable hands of a Mr. Edgar Allan Poe, who riding clippity-clop on an ox-hide saddle had rid by Satchel Henry's unreliable scalp to the haft of a camel on which this tar-mad crow would make row north by south or out of the blue the other way round to quench some strange unforeseen starbound thirst. Let's see. So looking, and it looks like we have one question so far from Karen. And Karen Stewart asks how we go about, or how I went about selecting the poems for the collection. That's a very, very good question. I don't think there's a solid answer, all the way around that people use. But for me, it comes from basically seeing what comes of both what you think at the time might be flotsam or debris, along with a couple of pieces you might have written in a span of 2 months that at that time were very meaningful to you. And then you save them away in a file, and you kind of put all these things together. For Valley of Empty Pockets, that process was probably from mainly, I would say, the spring of, or maybe fall of 2015 to last summer. So that was the really broad time, a few years, more than that probably. I would say 5. I know Anya, the sonnet series around which the rest of the collection collects, I had written that back in 2015, 2016, and along with a lot of the poems, which I would consider the bulk. And then you just had poems that sort of come to you later on in the process. I would say I had about, this is atypical, but I had about 7 to 10 pieces that would eventually join the final copy PDF that I turned in as my manuscript. But that just happened because they sort of were seeing to fruition what for quite some time lay, in the subconscious. So that gives you the general Venn diagram to look at. Here's this one circle of the main bulk and then others scattered about. And then you look at what you have and you try to make sure that the pieces aren't compromising each other. Hopefully, if anything, they are brushing against in ways that are going to provide another glimpse, another facet for thinking geodesically in terms of what we're seeing in the poems, what they're doing, what they're achieving. Certain maybe keywords will be, again, in the subconscious stage, you're not realizing this, but you're throughout this manuscript process, you're sort of peppering the book with certain keywords and things that, if not to your reader, then maybe only you pick up on. But I think it's something that, as we often more typically come back to poetry as something to resurrect, read again, gain and gather more meaning from, that happens. And these little keywords can be picked up upon. By the end of the process, in terms of hesitations, what's working, I would say that it's pretty much been foliated and sort of pressurized to an extent that it sort of makes itself. Maybe you'll change one or two poems here and there just to vary out the spectrum of temperatures of what you're working with your craft. As a wordsmith, but that's what it is for me. This is a poem. It's a short poem. It was one written when I was working at Columbia University, Office of Undergraduate Admissions for Columbia College and School of Engineering and Applied Science. And I was working the front desk, sort of at the helm of admissions and dealing with all the ridiculous phone calls. And anyways, but in between it, I was able to write neat little ditties like this. And this is called The Guest. It's only 4 lines. They sort of stretch the limits of the page. Sort of like just a little message in the bottle is what I would call it. So that's the sort of feeling I want everyone arriving at after they've come through, they pass through the experience of it. The Guest. The Guest. Comes back to me like a cold crumb of meat an insect bears on its shoulders, drumming through the cloth of my ear, returning to that point of null where a man in a straitjacket sits like a stone, holding the thought of his breath at the tip of his tongue, unable to wake up and confess. Very short. But for some, maybe it hits like a brick. This one's called Souvenir. It mentions Little Boy and Fat Man, which were the names of the 2 atomic weapons to be dropped upon Hiroshima. Is it Nagasaki? Yeah, I think so. Souvenir. And Dr. Todd, T-O-D, this is in the footnotes. There's lots of footnotes. Todd is German for death. Souvenir. Kept high on a shelf in a cigar box left over from the war America chipped her tooth on and blew out of her diapers while cutting a slice of wedding cake. With Little Boy and Fat Man. The last person who climbed up to open the lid returned a few days later, smelling of greener grass and talking about the other side, where every night a blind shepherd perishes in a snowdrift, 10 yards from a sunlit cabin in which an imp with cattle prod keeps life awful till he sends you back with the lazy eye, which Dr. Todd told will recognize when you hand him that list of algorithms, sick in exchange for the puzzle that, for good behavior, depicts the flash of how this world will end. This poem was published in the Asheville Poetry Review back in the spring of, spring of 2018. It's called The Assassin. It's supposed to be like a very jack-in-the-box experience. Ooh, I never did my commencement. There we go. The Assassin. Returning to my favorite fairy tale about the chicken that flies out of a children's pop-up book after stirring all night, finally to turn around and face the mirror in which his head's been sewn back on, only slightly cocked to one side and whistling in the dark, like one of those assassins who after years slips out from your nightmare to finish the job. All right, how's everyone doing? I hope everyone's doing wonderful and fine. Checking a little, okay, I'm good. We rolling. That's what they used to say. I was listening to a little bit of Elvis earlier today, trying to get my mojo on. And anyways, the guy was like, we rolling. I was like, yeah, we're rolling. Here we go. This is called Parfait. It's in reference to Derek Parfait. He was one of the greatest modern philosophers, specifically on morality. On What Matters is the 2-volume series that came out a couple years before he died. He died in January 1st. I remember this because a lot of really ugly synchronistic sort of stuff happened at the same time. It was January 1st, 2nd, that he passed away. But this is called Parfait. And it references Miles Davis. There's a little of that in it too. And these things sort of just, I use them as my gadgets. So try not to think about, oh, why Parfait? Well, how does the square of the blue and green of so what equate to this? That's for you to find out, hopefully, on a commode stool in the next 10 years. But here we go, Parfait. From the opening organ bass vamp of so what to blue and green and that muted kind of squill, scribbling out from one of Miles' crumpled post horns or yet bugles. Then back to the one train's third rail. Meanwhile, his paddleless train of thought drifts further out to sea, like a kick drum tugging itself out of shit, out of steam, and deeper into the palm of the ocean's quiet swell. Yeah, they're very Sphinx-like. I think they're sort of like me. You're either going to be attracted to it or it's going to be negative vibes, bro. I don't want to do that. Okay. Which is fine for me. Not a problem. You know, that's why there's a fucking marketplace. Get all your baked goods. Lucky Strike. This is about a dive bar in New York City. It's where the first place I and all my classmates at Columbia ended up at, called 1020. It's a bar, and it's this old philosopher, the story behind it. Basically, he retired. He's like, hey, I'm going to run a bar. I'm going to call it 1020 because it's on 1020 and 1/10 on Amsterdam. So the address is 1020. The bar's name is 1020. And then if you go inside, you wouldn't know this unless you had a class in philosophy at Columbia. Then you learn the joke as one of your professors, you know, funny. A lot of philosophers think they're comedians, right? So basically they have their stand-up, and that's one of the professor's stand-up jokes is the 1020 conundrums. Anyways, there's a case study in philosophy, and it's about this clock. Always, the person sees the clock at 10:20 a.m. or 10:20 p.m., whatever you want it to be. Regardless, does Alice, we'll call her Alice, when she looks at the clock and sees it 10:20, but unbeknownst to Alice, the clock has stopped because it doesn't have any good batteries. Anyways, because of the synchronicity of it being 10:20, Alice looking at the clock and reading 10:20, does that count for true knowledge? Well, it doesn't. So anyways, Lucky Strike is another case, and it's a Lucky Strike clock in this bar at 10:20 that always reads 10:20. Another cases, you strike a match, but through some combustion error with the manufacturing of the combustible matches, it basically went off by itself. So how do you know that the arrival of you motioning to strike the match and the match spontaneously combusting by itself, does that count for true knowledge? No, it doesn't. So those are the two little gimmicks. The fortune cookie little line serves as the epigraph, and it was taken from a fortune cookie on July 4th of 2015. That's another story. Lucky strike. A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not why ships are built. Fortune cookie, July 4th, 2015. It was not entirely clear why, so clouded with marks of my maker, I was waiting to arrive. Stood in the depth of my dive, my boldness had broken its legs and gained very little for how I remained barreled over the rocks of an error. My mind a fossilized amber, impounded by the terror of thought. How a man would rather burn a vessel than patch the wear that might make him whole. For myself, the dark imperative was to darn and endure. Yet my boldness had broken its legs and couldn't cope with the chagrin, despite variable attempts to supplant my cross with stronger timber. I can hear myself gape beyond the ship tilt, staring into the waxing gibbous of the clock, still marking the lucky strike of the bar's port. On the 10 and 4, the stopped hands helping to limn how quickly belief falls apart, becomes less than the ice that in the depth of my dive drained to the bite of the cask strength. I think the cask strength refers to how they bottle bourbon. So C-A-S-K, not the coffin cask, but you know, they kind of are similar, probably both made of pine trees. Are we getting close to the end? No, okay. Yeah, 3 minutes. 4, oh yeah. I can't count. I failed math like 3 times. Typically, I only failed them in dreams. Actually, I never failed them, but it was always math in my dreams. I was always late too, didn't have the calc, didn't have the TI-81, how was I going to do all this trigonometry? All right, Nietzsche. Bear in mind the hurricane's calm, blinking eye, barely within earshot. Then a strong man with a high striker mallet stepping up to the plate. And with Houston, we have lift off. You might faintly grasp the nonplus of being dropped to my knees. Through a crack in my skull, the dunt from the skinhead's monkey wrench speaking Japanese. That one kind of just snaps out. I actually got hit in the head with the monkey wrench. It's sort of on my way out of New York. Oh, I'm glad I survived that one. Woo, kind of fucked me up for a couple of years though, I'm not gonna lie. So here we go. Theme park for a dream psychosis. This is basically set at Coney Island in my mind when I was writing it. Has a couple of references to Hamlet. And the muted post horn, crumpled bugle, you'll find it throughout this collection of Valley of Empty Pockets. And that's a reference to the crying like of Lot 49 by Thomas Pynchon. And it's all these funny, fun puns of a novella. Anyways, theme park for a dream's psychosis. Unable to refrain from the bright hope that continued to float like a muffled post horn or crumpled bugle past the felt-tipped bop of my head as by tiptoe, I proceeded to steer myself beyond Coney's thrills and rides, its boardwalk's wavering line of mousetraps, all baited with the same blotted page torn from Hamlet. I had made it this far and now found myself lingering up the outstretched arm of a mildewed pier, one which would shave down to the sharp and I just did that to improvise, end of a pencil, to the point that punches past this evening, its cardboard backdrop where the lead paint keeps chipping off the sunset. Okay, I'll do one more and then we'll see if we're at a stopping point, which I think we're going to be. It's called Rapunzel and the Minus World. Kind of follows the same themes as the poem just read. And Oedipus is in reference to the main protagonist of, as just mentioned, The Crying of Lot 49 by Thomas Pynchon. A great living writer, if you don't know about him. I wrote also Gravity's Rainbow and V and a lot of other good stuff. Like Oedipus, inching her neck out a mirror's stained glass window only to reflect on the salt fog and pine-scented moss of her tear-fed asylum. I would find myself locked in the lack of some trigger, bogged down, if not walking dead, with the horse-drawn movement of batteries running out of breath as I toggled past the flat, still backdrop to this world's final stage, probing for a warp pipe or flagpole before tripping off half a pyramid with a belly flop, breaking through the moat's shark-infested skin. That's where the grim game blinks out, with you grasping for a lock, a golden lock, which trailing from the tower's top just stops a hair short. And with a lot of my poems, I think that a huge appreciation for what's going on. You know, we should give more appreciation. I think it's definitely spoken for, but more about how this exactly the page, the visual layout and footprint, crop circle, pattern sort of enriches hopefully the reading experience in itself. Anyways, I think we're at a stopping point. I didn't read as much as I would have typically. Maybe we've gone on for another 10 minutes, but we're at a good point. So I hear microphones chipping in now, so I'll shut up.
You did, everybody, so we can clap. Thanks, Eric. I don't know if you've been following some of the comments, but you have to go back. You have to go back to it because Kieran said, she said something about, I've been laughing out loud at Eric's commentaries. I'm scaring my cat. Mm-hmm. All right, there was a couple of questions that I don't want to miss. Oh, yeah, Kieran, I love that you put, I'm loving Eric's narratives that are going with the poems. Craig had a question about your line breaks. Do you revise your line breaks much?
For this collection, a lot more than I typically would, just because of that terrible snafu we had with the PDF to docx conversion. I would say for the most part, I'm someone who hammers away at a poem. Whatever I'm working on, I have a pretty good understanding of what visually is connecting with the actual keeping to meter. I've been more attentive in the process, particularly with the past year of writing, of at least first draft, everything's an iambic pentameter. And then I chisel away at where I feel like, you know, if there was a cliff face, right? Like what would be first to kind of like go off as one vein of material and shift over. And then for others, it's more of a Tetris block experience of putting things all together, seeing what hooks. Also, when you're doing line breaks, a lot of times you'll just be sort of microdosed with your focus on a word, just because of the attention that you're narrating in on. And that can lead to a little bit of springboarding when it comes to, oh, I can put this little catch into here. I can put a hook here. So sometimes you have little bursts like that that will hopefully not compromise what you've already put together. In terms of, is it going to be a couplet or a tercet, quatrain? Typically, I like working naturally with quatrains, quartets, or quatrains and tercets, sorry, and couplets as well. Should I look at some questions? Or yeah, it is a very, someone commented on the loose narrative arc, and that's definitely something that, that happens. You could see that there were chains and connections, or I give the reader opportunity to make connections as you dab along in the experience, and you can kind of see how this poem feeds into this or that. So yeah, for narrative, it is very loose. It's very elastic. So I hope there's a little bit of spring to it, right? There's a little bit of electricity when you hopefully get jolted by, oh, this sort of conceit is being used. So yeah.
I love that Josh asked a math question.
Oh, he did. Yeah, he would. He would. Yeah.
That's awesome. How much of your poetry would you say is reflection on the past, working out the present, or thoughts of the future?
That's a great question.
And
Yeah, right. I would say that's when I'm writing, I really get into certainly what some would call probably a trance. So my conception of time really can definitely go out the window. You know, I could. You get to a point of focus when you're working as a writer, and particularly when you get into the flow of writing, where your conception of time can be skewed and warped rather easily. Something you become more used to as you keep writing and are able to take breaks and do things throughout the day so that you can, you know, get back to the world. But I would say because of that, it's interesting. It makes the question more interesting of what am I focused on when I'm in these pockets of time, right? Where time really feels empty. What is it? You do trap into a vacuum or a void in that sense. I see there being almost like with some of the poems, I feel like I'm granted into a portal where everything sort of congeals together, honestly. I've seen and looked at pieces that have more weight now as they collide and collect with things that will be written 2-3 years from that time. A lot of times when you're working like that, you're like, oh, I was sort of in this same sort of whatever, like this was the river that was running at that time, and this river's back now, you know. So a little time lapse like that have a way of working with you. I hope that helps.
it did sound mathy. I wanted percentages. Kieran has a great question. I know you have a long list of poets. Kieran asked, who are the particular poets that you feel inspire you or that you enjoy reading?
Sure. I'd say I'll go ahead and break up, say about 5 who are living. Of course, Malika. She is the butterfly and just spreading of love of everything. So Malika's definitely I love her work, and you probably know this, but her own collection is coming out, and she's going to be having a reading for it, and I plan to be there, and I hope to see you along on the sidelines, right? We'll be warming up the bench from Leica. But anyways, sore throat, but I'm completely healthy.
That's so awesome. Karen just wrote, nice plug for Malika. Yeah, we've been friends for a long time. Thanks, Eric. That was really amazing I think that somebody else commented about like your, talk between poems kind of fit with the poems. So that was nice.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. And the funny thing is that I don't think at all about what I'm going to say before this or like anything like that. But naturally, it's fun. It's fun and cool how whatever the hell comes out of my mouth, it's you can make the connection. So that's good. Anyways, I'm pretty talkative too because, dude, it's fucking the Twilight Zone out here. Fucking, I was in Asheville, I was downtown Asheville, right? And I'm like down getting a coffee, and this lady in her like Ford Mustang like drops by. She nurse guard. She's like, "Y'all need to eat y'all cake somewhere else. There's a shooting. There's a live shooter." And I was like, "Oh my god!" But anyways, yeah, some
today.
No, it was 2 days ago. Some black job shot at his parole officer in front of the courthouse, the Buncombe County Courthouse, downtown Asheville, and he got fucking lit up, dude. He got lit up by a deputy sheriff.
Oh yeah, that's just poor planning all around.
Yeah, not a good idea.
I've got everybody unmuted. So I didn't know if somebody had any other questions before we went to open mic. And so far I've been adding people's names for open mic without your permission. Sorry. I have Kieran, Craig, and Laura, and then Josh and Kyle written down because awesome. Christy already told me no way.
I'm looking forward to hearing everyone. So that's going to be great. We're going to be the best fucking bench warmers on your side. What else? Okay. Yeah.
So we will move to open mic now. If you really don't want to read, go ahead and write no to me. And I will take that hint. But if I don't hear a no, I'm taking it as a yes. Thank you so much, Eric. It was really cool. No, it's funny. Like it was different, like having read, versions of this manuscript early on and like seeing it kind of grow and build. It's also very different to hear it read. So that was nice. Because we don't oftentimes do that. You and I don't. Like we'll send stuff virtually.
I've scrolled my entire life away, Malika. It's been a while.
Yeah.
I've been kept from the public, Malika. It's not my fault.
Well, okay. Don't set me up for a line like that. I've been kept from the public and not expect me to say something snarky. God. Okay, you can get that.
I gave myself this tattoo, Malika.
What that? What is that?
It's a bugle. It's a muted post one. Yeah.
God damn it.
Your turn. All right.
Oh my God. Not showing any tattoos. And Karen just wrote, where do we get this book? See, I'm gonna bring this train back on track. You can get his book at Main Street Rag, and I will chef screen again, Valley of the Empty Pocket.
Why isn't my publisher here? Why isn't Scott? Where is Scott?
Oh, Scott is actually hopefully doing okay. He was not feeling well.
Yeah, he was freaked out. He thought he had the quarantine. That's what they call it. They're like,
quarantine. The quarantine, yeah. Well, the last time I talked to him, he was doing a little bit better, but he was quarantined, taking some time away from jail.
I didn't give him a heart attack.
No, you did not. What is your God, Josh? I could tell you're friends with Eric. What is Eric's #1 pandemic supply recommendation?
You really want to know?
No.
Okay.
You can private message that to. Actually, you know what? Go ahead and say it.
I want to know.
No. I can't, Malika, I cannot believe you just set me up like that. Oh my God. That was good. You almost got me. Just do it.
Come on.
Okay. Number one, survival. It's chessboard
I knew you. Come on.
and candles.
Oh,
Yeah. And records. I don't know.
Yeah, those are good ones.
What's
And
that?
evidently, chess is a classic. This is awesome. I'm gonna just, I get to keep these chats, by the way. So this is gonna be fun.
Oh no. You got me for life now, don't you?
Oh, in that case.
This is gonna be on YouTube.
Oh, Josh, I can put all this together and take it to Language as a Virus site and then, cut and splice, and we'll have our group poem. I'll send it to everybody once it's done. All right, I'm muting everybody, and then we will start with open mic. Karen, are you reading? Are you good with reading?
of course.
All right. Craig, are you reading?
Yes, ma'am.
Laura?
All right, I'm just going to get some more drink. Oh, you can hear me.
Okay, Laura, are you open for reading? I'll take that as a no. Josh and Kyle, no, Josh already said no. Kyle, you want to read?
Come on, people.
Mhm.
It's okay. So that gives us, Karen, you're up. We'll give it a minute. So, and let me just go ahead and pitch. So it's Christopher Davis is next week. So April 9th will be Chris Davis, 7 o'clock. And then the following week, which is April 16th, will be me reading.
Woo-hoo!
I know, I'm so excited. And so I hope that some of the people can come back because y'all have been a trip. All right, we waited for you. I'm muting everybody and gonna change I'm gonna take you off a spotlight so you're not having to be spotlight anymore. And that way we go to Karen next. I'm gonna ask you to start your video, Karen, and when you see that, go ahead and start your video.
Let's started. Oh, I ran Eric out of the room. Okay. I don't blame him. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you ready?
You are good to go.
Okay, so this is fresh ink, which is usually scary. So, yeah, I just finished it like 5 minutes before I sat down at the computer. So, anyway, the name is Winning, but it's W-H-E-N, Winning. Right? Yeah, I see.
Good. Yes.
Okay. Oh, it just sank in, Malika. Okay.
I know, I'm slow.
Okay, winning. When my writing pen became a danger, when I no longer showed my teeth to smile, when my phone would ring and I would not answer, when I wouldn't wave anyone over, when I would not shake anyone's hand, when I would not speak to strangers, when I would not look at strangers, when we all were strangers, when I no longer welcomed a hug, when becomes remember when, we won't be when, we will be one again.
Nice.
Oh, thanks.
Wow, that there's a place that is collecting pandemic poems. Karen, I'm going to suggest you send it to them. I'll have to look up who though, because I can't recall it right off, but that would be really fantastic.
Okay. Thank you, Malika. Please do.
I will. Yeah, and no, it did take me a minute. I had to spell it out loud to myself.
I enjoyed watching you do that.
Right? It's a pretty bad disability for a writer to have. You're gonna have to spell that out loud so I can translate it into something visual, and then I'll know what you just said. So I'm one of those peeps for the apocalypse. Thanks, Eric. Damn. All right, muting everybody again, and then I'll be heading towards you, Craig.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's always good to see you. All right, Craig, you are unmuted. Yay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, this is called, this should really be untitled. Poet, I'll resurrect you. Convert your dust to flesh, reinvigorate your fingers, and reanimate your eyes. You were always uncertain of resurrection's power, if Gabriel's horn would ever call your soul to flower. Flame of God may well guard the garden gate, but your ingenious keys lie hidden in my heart.
Wow.
Oh,
Cool.
thank you, Craig. That was beautiful.
And that was awesome. That actually, everybody's work is fitting in together today. That's awesome. Thank you, Craig.
Thank
Do
you.
I have anybody else that wants to read?
I think Laura wants to read.
Where is Laura? Laura, I'm asking you to start your video so I can say hi to you. Yay, you're somewhere here.
Laura.
There you are. Can you hear me? You're unmuted. If you want to read, you may do so. Hi,
I don't know what's going on with my mic, but I don't think it's working.
I hear you now.
Okay, good. I was starting to get a little worried about my computer. So like everybody else, I've been thinking more about family because I don't get to see them. We stay in touch in a lot of different ways. And of course, this poem is about someone who's been gone for 36 years, my grandmother. It's called Because Neatness Counts. Everything just so in your world led to a maelstrom of tidying, preparation for the cleaning lady. That storm could last a whole day. Insistence on the niceties, the opposite of which you labeled ignorant. Say hello to Mrs. Beecher, you admonish your future daughter-in-law, who sulks silently on the sofa, waiting to escape to the movies. That's it.
Yay,
I
Laura.
can't hear. Thank you.
Hey, what's tomorrow, Laura?
Thank you.
Stop.
Oh, is it her birthday?
It's a milestone birthday. Quarantine birthday.
Okay, can anybody here sing? Because if I do, this is painful.
Oh, we should sing.
That was
Don't sing. That song is a dirge.
The off comments are the best. All right. I think everybody's had a chance to read. I'll go ahead and I'm going to read one from
Yay, Malika.
Stumblefield. I know I'm
Yay!
never prepared, Karen. This is the first time I actually am prepared.
Are you doing a book launch tease?
No, I don't even know how to do that. I'm going to do the share screen so I can get to the poem. This is from the Stumblefields, and I just realized I didn't mute everybody, but that's fine. This is one you'll remember, Eric. These are my transgressions. I've eaten brunch with a lesser saint wearing a horseshoe halo and plucked the elderflower from his hand. I've worn a shadow to a wedding and sunlight to a wake. I've forgotten that every blink's a funeral and suffered a momentary loss of light. Born of salt, slanted light and wind, stirring stars into the river, I still see my face in a water fountain. I've transfigured a necklace of red flowers into bees and turned wine into water. I'm a clanging bell, the lost left shoe, the dirt road through deep woods leading home.
Oh,
Oh, took my breath away.
oh, that was fabulous.
Oh. Mm.
Eric was writing more dirges, tomorrow's April Fool. Wait,
Yeah, that's me.
what are you writing here? Like that John Ashbery poem that we've drunk bread from? Tell me stories, Eric. You have no stories to tell about stuff we've done. All right, guys, I'm going to see if y'all want to turn video on so everybody can see each other.
Sure.
We'll see how unstable our bandwidth gets.
Oh, mine won't let me start.
Let me see if I can help start that.
I think you've wisely blocked me.
I did not block you. I've asked you to start your video, see if that works.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say,
can't
sometimes
watch
just having the cue to start it, it'll start. And then I'm asking Eric and Josh. There we go. Eric, come back.
it.
Tyler.
Hey, Craig. Hey, Laura.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Christy. Oh my God, this was so good.
Yeah,
It's
thanks,
just-
guys. It was really great to see everybody. And it was nice to see all the comments and the. Oh, Eric said, nope. Yeah, you start that video back up. Now we got to see what you're up to.
I think he might be hitting those pandemic supplies.
I know I have mine.
The chess set.
Yeah, the chess set.
Yeah.
The chess set. Yes, he's doing the chess set. All right. Well, thank y'all so very much. I hope you'll join me next week. 'Cause I've never heard Christopher read, so this will be something interesting. Oh, it won't let him, is what he's saying.
Oh, boo.
It will if I.
Insist.
Yeah,
Okay, I got it.
I was gonna say I know how to
I
force the
hear
issue.
you. Oh, there he is.
Was it user error?
You know I don't allow the word no.
Yeah, probably. It probably was my fault. Tends to be.
Uh-huh. Okay. It will help. Multiple helps down there. All right. Well, thank y'all so very much. And Eric, it was wonderful to hear you
It's
read.
so
That was
fun. Thanks
to be
everyone
together.
for being a part of this, and it was great hearing everyone else's readings. So yeah, I look forward to seeing this up and completely ruining my reputation online. So
Oh.
tons of hits on